has he done that's good? Nothing. Has anything that he's done turned out? Everything he touches turns to shit.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Speechless. I'm your host, Kev Phares, 23-year-old conservative activist, host of Speechless, the radio show, but also right here on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Rumble, Facebook, wherever you're watching from. And to make sure you don't miss a minute of anything that we're going to talk about here today, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment what you think, share it with your friends, all that fun stuff, because we're going to talk about things here today in a way that no one else does. That's why, at a minimum, make sure that you're on X. If you are watching on X, once again, do not forget to like this video. Hit that heart right down there. Reshare it, retweet it, whatever you want to call it. Do that. Share this video with your friends. I'd really appreciate it. But we have a lot we're going to talk about today. World War III, are we approaching it? Iran attacked Israel. President Trump responded, but Biden even kind of predicted it. What did he do? We're going to get into all of that. But that first video that I started off with today is President Trump at his rally last night in Pennsylvania. Let's take a look at it one more time. I don't know if I cut it off quick enough, but there is a little bit of profanity in it. So sorry, I know it's a family-friendly show, kind of, a little bit, not really. But let's take a look once again at this video of Trump last night in Pennsylvania, right here.
What has he done that's good? Nothing. Has anything that he's done turned out? Everything he touches turns to shit.
Everything he touches, President Biden, everything he touches turns to S-H-I-T. Man, and a lot of people seem to have a comparable belief in that. I'd say maybe even close to 51% of Americans. I know that's been trending on Twitter a lot today. But let's talk about Iran and Israel. Before we get into everything that actually happened just yesterday, the insane terrorist attacks that happened, I want to start off with this clip. This is a clip from Rush Limbaugh's show back in 2020. And while Trump was still president, he was asked questions like, what is going to happen? Like, if Iran were to try anything, what would happen? What would happen? And once again, with a bit of profanity, here is what Donald Trump said on Rush Limbaugh's show back then. Here's that.
Right. And Iran knows that, and they've been put on notice. If you fuck around with us, if you do something bad to us, we are going to do things to you that have never been done before.
Man, one more time. Let's listen to that one more time.
Right. And Iran knows that, and they've been put on notice. If you fuck around with us, if you do something bad to us, we are going to do things to you that have never been done before.
We are going to do things to you that have never been done before. Basically, Trump saying in that moment, F around and find out. That's basically what he's saying. F around and find out. Now, fast forward to today. Back then, what had happened? We had the Abraham Accords between Israel and surrounding Islam nations that basically created a sense of peace in the Middle East. 4 years later, under President Biden's leadership, what do we have? Yesterday, out of the Daily Wire, the Islamic Republic of Iran launched a drone strike, as well as fired several missiles against Israel on Saturday in response to Israel killing a top Iranian general, who allegedly played a key role in Hamas's October 7th terrorist attacks. Israeli officials said that it will take several hours before drones were able to reach Israel. And given the defensive assets that Israel and the United States have deployed, there's a strong likelihood that most, if not all, drones will be shot down. Many were. U.S. officials originally estimated that 50 to 75 one-way suicide drones were launched, but that number now appears to be well over 100, as officials believe that a combination of 400 to 500 drones and missiles were launched at Israel from several countries where Iran has terrorist proxy groups. The majority of munitions are being launched directly from Iranian soil. Shortly after, Iran launched a massive attack on Israel, firing missiles along with hundreds of suicide drones. At the United States, ally former President Donald Trump wrote on Truth Social. This is what he had to say. He said that the attack would have never happened under his leadership. Quote on Truth Social, Trump said, "Israel is under attack. This should have never been allowed to happen. This would have never happened, all in caps, never happened if I were president, said Trump. And in fact, his national press secretary for his campaign echoed that same sentiment on Fox News during an interview earlier today. Let's take a look and a listen at this clip from Trump's national press secretary on Fox News earlier today, right here.
Was made aware of the attack on Israel last night on our way to his rally in Pennsylvania. And he made it a priority to ensure that those remarks were at the top of his speech, to express 100% support for Israel. And as he expressed last night in Pennsylvania to a massive crowd of people that were on their feet clapping and cheering, is that the sad truth is this would have never happened to Israel if President Trump were still in the White House. Just a few years ago, there was peace in the Middle East. President Trump got Arab nations to come to the table to negotiate peace deals with Israel that never spoke before he was the negotiator in chief. He signed historic sanctions on the Iranian regime, cutting off the neck of the Iranians. They had never been more weak, more broke. And just in a matter of a few years, Joe Biden has reversed all of President Trump's very effective policies. And now they have been emboldened. And we've seen that aggression. The world is in chaos right now because of Joe Biden's weakness. And it just shows how petty and ridiculous this trial that we have starting in New York is tomorrow, when the world is at war, when our border is under invasion by terrorists and criminals, when inflation is increasing. The Democrats and Joe Biden are focused on prosecuting the former president of the United States.
Exactly. Where are the priorities of the president of the United States, of the executive office? I can't even just say the president of the United States anymore, because you and I both know that he's not really the one in charge, that he holds so little actual power himself. However, the power he does hold is to show the world the kind of strength America is supposed to have. However, he's not. Just as that press secretary said, Joe Biden has been weak on every single issue. The only thing that he'll actually stand for is to try to throw his political opponents in jail. And this is a perfect example. What happened with this Iran attack? In fact, he knew it was going to happen. During the Friday dump, which, if you're not familiar in the media, the Friday dump is when a lot of news is put into circulation on Friday afternoons in hopes that the majority of the public will not notice it because they're getting off work, they're starting their weekend, having a good time, everything like that. But, oh man, when there's a huge attack on Saturday against Israel, people are going to notice when you said this, Biden. What did he say? Well, this is what Biden had to say on Friday, the day before the attack, just 2-3 days ago. Let's take a look and a listen to this clip just a few days ago, before the attack. Once again, this is before the attack. Here's this.
Mr. President, to Iran in this moment.
Don't.
Are American personnel and assets at risk, Mr. President? Mr. President, are American troops at risk as well?
I always love when he does this, is like he opens it up to questions that he's not supposed to actually answer because his handlers don't want him to. And then he starts walking away, and then he hears one, and he's like, oh, man, this is my chance. This is my chance. Bumbling Joe Biden, gonna tell everybody. This is what I'm going to tell him. And then he thinks he's going to come back, and then he makes a fool out of himself. Watch this.
We are devoted to the defense of Israel. We will support Israel. We will help defend Israel, and Iran will not succeed. Thank you very much.
What would trigger a direct U.S. response, sir?
Well, once again, what did he say at the very beginning? The question being asked of him is, do you have a message for Iran? And this is before the attack yesterday. Do you have a message for Iran? Joe?
Mr. President, to Iran in this moment.
Don't.
That was his message to Iran. Now, just for contrast, I want to go back to what, so Joe Biden is, don't. And then immediately after that, yesterday or Friday afternoon, he flew to a beach, to a vacation, of which about half of his presidency, 50% of his presidency, has been a vacation. Now, let's go back to 4 years ago. 4 years ago, 4 what are really short, but feels like an eternity ago, years ago. This is what we had. Reminder.
Right. And Iran knows that, and they've been put on notice. If you fuck around with us, if you do something bad to us, we are going to do things to you that have never been done before.
And then, oh man, every time they messed around, it was Qasem Soleimani al-Baghdadi has been killed. He died like a dog. He died like a dog. Probably one of the most wimpy deaths. They're saying, I'm not saying it, but I hear other people saying it. That he died like a dog. We had our dogs, beautiful, the most beautiful dogs, American patriotic dogs. They say they're German shepherds, but we know they're pure-blood Americans. They went and killed the Iranian official, al-Baghdadi. Al-Baghdadi, yes, died like a dog. That's what we had. And now we have bumbling Joe Biden who gets up at a podium and says, don't. Please don't. Like Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory. That's what it reminds me of. I don't know if you guys, maybe I'm making myself seem older than I am, but Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory, when Gene Wilder, you had all these, like the people are asking, there's like, oh my God, are you gonna stop these kids from throwing a fit? And he just stands there and he goes, no, please don't stop. That's Joe Biden's level of enthusiasm for telling Iran prior to the attack. He knew this was going to happen. I guarantee you our intelligence knew this was going to happen. And that's why they were asking, do you have any messages for Iran? And he was like, no, please don't stop. What a dummy. What a dummy. And then we have people like United States National Security Council Coordinator for Strategic Communications, John Kirby, who goes on Stephanopoulos' show on ABC. And this is what he has to say just this morning when asked a little bit about Joe Biden saying don't. Now, after the attack, this is one of our national security advisors. This is what he has to say to the question of what does that say? If Joe Biden says don't and they still do, what does that say about us? Here's that.
The president also called on Iran not to retaliate, but they did anyway. What does that tell you?
Well, again, what it tells me, as I looked at last night, what it tells me is that we can make good on our commitment to defend Israel. It tells me that Israel does have superior military capability. Just think about the hardware that Iran threw into the sky and how little damage that caused. I mean, that's a real testament to how strong the IDF is.
The president also called on Iran.
So that's what it is. The question, once again, the question.
Not to retaliate, but they did anyway. What does that tell you?
What President said no, they did. What does that tell you? Well, what it really tells me is that our president of the United States doesn't even have verbal authority. He strikes no type of leadership, feelings of leadership or fear. Not that we need a president to be afraid of, but we want our adversaries to be afraid of what our president could do, having that finger on the red button. Iran knows that Joe Biden is a weak little, I don't want to say it, family-friendly show, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean. So that is what it tells us. John Kirby sits over here and says, well, what it tells us, Georgie, is that we can now just keep funneling more of your taxpayer dollars over to Israel. That's what it tells us. That's what it tells us. Go fund yourself. Go fund yourself. Yeah, go fund yourself. Go fund your own war. Don't make me fund it for you. John Kirby, because that's what he's saying. When he says, look at all their stellar equipment, look at all the stellar equipment that you bought them. And look, I'm not anti-Israel. I want to be clear too. I'm not anti-Israel. I support Israel in this fight more than I support Islamic terrorists. But at the same time, what I don't support is this idea that we don't have problems in our own country. Our southern border is in shambles. Every other day we're hearing about crimes that illegal immigrants are committing, or even legal citizens killing cops in Memphis. And they're just all of a sudden back out on the street like it's no problem. We look over at Iran. We look over at Israel, And we say, oh my God, that's so sad. They're like third world countries. We have all these like white suburban moms in the United States. And it's more than just that. I'm just creating the stereotype for the mental image. We have these white suburban moms in the United States. They're like, oh my God, we need to support the people in the Gaza Strip because they're going through such terror. And I'm not going to try to minimize what they're going through. It's awful. But go to O Block and see just as bad as some of the worst parts of the Gaza Strip. America isn't doing all that great either. And over 51% of Americans, as Twitter says, think that same way. I'm seriously. Now, not only will Biden and everybody else not do anything, it seems like a lot of other people won't do anything. And I'm going to talk about that. But Congress does seem to be ready for action. Here's how Congress is responding to Iran's attack on Israel. Members of Congress changed plans for this upcoming week and issued statements on a reaction to Iran's attack on Israel this weekend, prompting the United States to help its ally fend off the onslaught. The GOP-controlled House will, quote, move from its previously announced legislative schedule next week to instead consider legislation that supports our ally Israel and holds Iran and its terrorist proxies accountable, announced Majority Whip Steve Scalise, the Republican from Louisiana. I believe even Mike Johnson, our Speaker of the House, said that he is ready to fund more to Ukraine and Israel, which I've already voiced my distaste for. And this is why I say consistently, that I am not a Republican and I by no means am a Democrat. I'm a conservative. And people will often ask me, what do I want to conserve? America, its founding principles, Judeo-Christian values, and my own money, which is why when it comes to funding these wars, I'm highly skeptical, and that's an understatement.